He began his career as an amateur at Skirler in Hull, and he's ended up here, Red Hall Rugby League headquarters, from playing with his community to guiding his country. And this is where his desk is these days. My guest this week is the England coach, Steve McNamara. Welcome to Superstars and my guest, Steve McNamara, the England coach. Steve, this is your office these days, I expect, and it's a little bit of a distance from Skirler where you started, your amateur club.
Yeah, about 60 miles down the road, but you know, Skirler was my first club, my community club. I'm really proud of it, you know, really proud that I managed to achieve some success coming from that club, and there's many of other players now playing at Skirler who I'm sure will go on to achieve great success.
Where did your love of rugby come from?
It was my dad. My dad was a coach of coaches. He was a coach educator, so he used to help run the coaching courses, and the people used to go on and learn to be rugby league coaches. And I used to sit there and listen and just observe from that. And you know, from that point, I went to watch Hull FC as a young boy, and you know, watched Hull FC throughout the 80s, and that was a great start to you know, really finding something that you enjoyed and something you was passionate about and something that you would want to do in the future.
You must have been so delighted then when Hull wanted to sign you, you know, hometown club, hometown boy, and playing for the black and white.
Yeah, 17 years of age. You know, Brian Smith was really revolutionising sport at that time, you know, in rugby league. You know, he'd come from Australia and there wasn't many Australian coaches. I think he may have been the first one. Things were changing at Hull FC, and I was fortunate to have a really good upbringing with my parents, and you know, my first taste of amateur rugby league, but my first impressions at professional rugby league, to be coached by Brian Smith and to be shown that that was the way to do things, certainly put me in the right footing again.
It was a fantastic time in your career as well, wasn't it? Because you really were a bit of a standout in that team. You were the captain, you were the main kicker, you had those great people around you as well. Des Hasler.
Well, that developed a little bit afterwards. I mean, yeah, you know, I was captain of the team when I was 21, when Des Hasler was. You know, he was playing for us, and Des was one of the most decorated Australian players, and Roy Simmons was the coach. He gave me the captaincy, so that was a great honour. But really, to get to that stage, you know, my career had gone pretty well as a junior. I'd played through England schoolboys and got into Hull FC's first team at an early age, and things were going well. But Brian Smith left, and Noel Cleal took over, and the Premiership final in 1990, I think it was 1991, and he dropped me, he left me out.
That must have been heartbreaking.
Well, it was, and it was my first real obstacle. It was my first real bump along the way.
Your first test.
Yeah,
of
yeah,
personality.
and I'd not really experienced that too much earlier in my career, and I was thankful that I did, because I think I just took my eye off the ball at that stage, and I missed my opportunity to play in a major event. I went off and sulked for a little while. Took myself off to Australia to develop my career for a couple of months out there, and came back and was a whole lot better for it.
Then you moved to Bradford. Why did you move away from your hometown club? What made you go over to Bradford?
I had to, really, you know, ambition, wanting to be the best that you possibly could be, wanting to be in the best environment, in the best club, and Hull FC wasn't that at the time. And you know, I get asked the question about, do you regret leaving, and I don't. I've got no regrets about it whatsoever, because it was a decision I had to make at that time.
And it was Super League coming in, and that's where the future was.
Well, it was, and you know, I loved my time at Hull FC. You know, to captain your hometown team is a major achievement, but we just weren't going to achieve anything at that stage, and I desperately wanted to have some sort of success. And Bradford Bulls and a couple of other clubs were having a look, and it was the Bradford club that decided to join, and I had 4 fantastic years there as a player.
And silverware as well. Always helps as well, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. I mean, 97. I joined in 96, and I was cup tied for the famous Wembley final, if you like, where Robbie Paul scored his hat-trick, but managed to play there in 97, and we won the Super League title as it was in 97. It was the last year before it went into a grand final series. So yeah, it was some great times at the Bulls. And
a growing time for the Bulls as well. They really were at the forefront of rugby league and grasping Super League by the Bulls' horns, if you like.
They were the pace setters. You know, there were other teams that were probably slightly better than us on the field, but the overall dynamics of what we were at that stage, the group of people, the personalities that we had, and the feel that we got from the fans, and the fans got from ourselves, and the way Odsal was set up at that period of time when, you know, Peter Deakin was there and Brian Smith was there. It was just a great time to be a Bull.
Then you went to Wakefield in 2000. It wasn't the best of times. You were only there for part of a season. You'd signed for 4 years, but they were going through a few troubles as well, and let you and several of the older players go.
Yeah, it went horribly wrong, to be fair. And I was, at that stage, I was disappointed that I'd left Bradford Bulls and probably wasn't in the right state of mind. And Wakefield, you know, offered us an opportunity, but it just didn't work out, and that was through no fault of theirs. It was probably more on my part than anything else. I just didn't feel settled. I didn't find my feet there and didn't play well, which is always the main thing as a player. And unfortunately, the financial issues on the back of that contributed it to not being one of the best periods of my career. But again, it's one of those periods that you have to fight through and overcome, and probably come out a lot better as a person out the other side.
I do remember that very personally, actually, that season, especially pre-season, because I was invited along to see how you all do your beat tests and stuff, and invited to get involved, and I've got a little video. It might just remind you of how fit you were back then, Steve, back in the days when Andy Kelly was the main coach.
Yeah, I do remember it, Angela, actually. Look how all the footage looks as well.
So just who is the fastest Wildcat? Well, it's not me, but it's not Steve McNamarra either.
Just put this on tape. I beat Steve. I was quicker than him. Don't worry, you'll get better, especially as the season goes on. You were never the fastest.
Yeah, I wasn't, and you did beat me, but I think I must have had a pulled calf that day or something like that.
Yeah, that'll be what it was, yeah.
Listen, it's speed between the ears that counts, not speed between... When you're slow, that's what anybody who's slow says, it's the speed of thought in between the ears that counts. And I think there was only probably ever one player slower than me, and that was probably Brian McDermott, actually.
Oh, really?
He used to do the speed at Bradford. If you'd come to Bradford at that stage, you'd have beat two of us.
The thing is as well, you've scored memorable tries. We did one last year with Sam's super tries, and as we say, we're not the fastest, but boy, we're glamorous when you got that ball.
Yeah, that was a comedy of errors, that try. It was, you get reminded of it by the players who were involved all the time and when we bump into them. But that was... Again, that was a great team. That was just a bit of anticipation, a little bit of luck, a little bit of fortune. But yeah, I think, you know, as people, as players, as coaches, I think we all have strengths and we all have deficiencies, and quite often it's about surrounding yourself with other people or other personnel that can complement what you've got. And I will say that was probably one of Brian Smith's strongest strengths at that, when he first put that Bradford Bulls team together. The way those players complemented each other was just it fit perfectly. You had
2 or 3 years then at Huddersfield before you went back to Bradford, and you went back at a time when things were fantastic, things were going well there. You're assistant coach, academy coach, and just tell us a little bit about that transition into coaching. Why did you want to go into that?
Well, I'd obviously been, you know, as I said earlier in the career, my dad was a coach of coaches, you know, so he was an early influence. Brian Smith, when you're 17 and that first impression, and that's how a coach conducts yourself, looks like. I really liked that, so I used to go back and help coach at Scala when I possibly could, and you know, yeah, went to Huddersfield, and that was a really interesting time just before I moved back to Bradford, because we got relegated, and I remember actually probably another low point in my career was getting substituted. Tony Smith brought me off, and the crowd cheered. He absolutely cheered because he'd brought on, and that was a really low point. But we fought through that. We got relegated. We got back to promotion. But during that period of time, I was working with Tony. When we were full time, but we were a first division club after we'd been relegated, and so we all had to do different jobs. So I was helping Tony, you know, with videos and analysis, and starting to cut my teeth in that. Went back to Bradford as Brian Noble's assistant, and you know, we won a World Club Challenge. We got to a couple of grand finals during that period as an assistant coach, and again, I was coaching the academy to a grand final win, which was you know, a great honour for myself and all my staff and players that was involved in that team.
Brian was due to go to Wigan eventually, and you were offered the head coach's job. You were given the option of going to Hull as well at that point. Why did you hang on and want to take the Bradford job?
Yeah, that was a really difficult decision, not to go back to Hull. It would have been possibly the easier decision at the time. But I felt I'd served an apprenticeship at Bradford. I knew the club as a player and as an assistant coach, and felt I wanted to take on the challenge of what was ahead, and it was a huge challenge. But that was coming. You know, it was. I was aware of some difficulties in terms of the financial situation, but probably not quite to the extent as it all unfolded.
Lost some big players around that period.
Well, during that period, yeah, we had some, you know, major issues. We had to save some money, massive money, and that was, you know, when you talk about coaching, you can go on all the coaching qualifications, you can go on get all the experience you like, but when you are dealing with first 2 weeks in Stuart Field and world record transfer fee, you can't go on courses to get yourself ready for those types of situations. And there was it was very enjoyable, it was tough, it was difficult, and we had some tough decisions to make, but really proud of what was left at Bradford in terms of an outstanding training facility and some young players who, I look now at the first team and see Elliot Whitehead and Tom Alberson, James Donaldson, Danny Addy, Adam O'Brien, the Burgess boys who have now flown the nest and gone to Australia. That was really what it was all about, Bradford, at that time, and hopefully now they can go from strength to strength and really start to challenge for honours again.
While you were at Bradford, there was a bit of an overlap with the England job as well. You were assistant to Tony Smith for England. When you left Bradford, you became the England coach. We're going to talk a lot about your job as the England coach in part two. We're going to take a break now, but join us after the break when we'll talk to Steve more about his international career with England.